They called it a relic, the kind of weapon no advanced species bothered with anymore. Kinetic energy was outdated. They said crude, primitive, that's what they thought until they saw what a hyper-accelerated tungsten rod could do when fired at 3% the speed of light. Before that moment, Earth was background noise. In the galactic scene, a late bloomer, a blue rock with too much emotion and too little control. The Galactic Senate viewed us as barely sentient, still squabbling over land and flags, still clinging to concepts like honor and vengeance. We were tolerated, patronized, and most of all underestimated. Until the railgun. I remember the day we fired it like it scorched into my brain. My name's Kellen. I was a weapons engineer, but not one of those clipboard holding types. I didn't wear a lab coat. I wore grease, sweat, and sometimes blood when things got bad. My team was stationed in the Oort fringe beyond the Mars blockade on an old mining station. We repurposed into a weapons lab, the kind of project Earth Command denied funding for in public, but doubled down on in the shadows. We called it Project Hammerfall. The goal was simple: build something that couldn't be hacked, jammed, or reasoned with. No AI, no laser-guided diplomacy, just pure unforgiving physics, a 400-ton magnetically accelerated rod that ignored shields, treaties, and morality. We weren't supposed to use it. It was built as a bluff, a bargaining chip, but bluffing only works when the enemy respects the player. The Zorvani didn't. The lizards had tech that bent gravity like clay and minds that could scan thought patterns. From orbit, they had ruled a quadrant of the galaxy for 10,000 years, and humans were the insects crawling across their new lawn. We'd been warned. Our ambassadors were sent back in cryoboxes. Our defense satellites blinked out without a trace. Then came the message. Not a declaration of war, just a single line: kneel or be corrected. Earth panicked. The Senate begged. The colonies scattered. And command they stalled. They issued statements called for unity, for calm, but on station Omega 19, we didn't wait because we knew what no one else would admit. The Zorvani didn't want our surrender. They wanted our extinction. The targeting array locked onto the Zorvani dreadnought, floating arrogantly just outside Jupiter's ring. It was a mobile fortress the size of a continent, armed with enough power to sterilize planets, but they never expected us to fight like this, not with a weapon that needed no computer, no warning system, no transmission to give it away, just metal and speed. The countdown was silent, no ceremony, no music, no last words, just the hum of 100 superconducting coils spinning. Up, then whump. There's no sound in space, but we felt it. The railgun absorbed so much power it dimmed the station lights for 6 seconds. 6 eternal seconds before the cameras showed us the aftermath. The dreadnought didn't explode, it disintegrated. A chunk of it was just gone, vaporized. The rest spinning in broken arcs like a dead god's bones. No shields had flared. No evasive maneuvers had been made. There was no time. It hit them before they even registered the weapon had fired. That was the moment the galaxy changed. The Zorvani comms went dark. Their reinforcements stopped mid-jump. Their diplomats, for the first time in recorded galactic history, issued a transmission with no demand, no threat. Just silence, followed by one phrase in trembling standard: we did not know. They called us primitive, obsolete, barbaric. But when they saw what we built, something so brutally effective it made entire civilizations rethink 10,000 years of warfare, they realized something chilling. Humans don't fight fair, we fight to finish, and that's when the galaxy forgot how to speak. The aftermath wasn't glory, it wasn't cheering, it wasn't victory banners or parades, it was quiet, the kind of quiet you only hear after someone's crossed a line they can't uncross. We didn't celebrate on Omega 19, we stood there in the control room watching the wreckage of the Zorvani dreadnought drift like burning trash across Jupiter's orbit. Engineers, mechanics, soldiers, we all stared in silence like we were trying to convince ourselves we hadn't just kicked off the first real war the galaxy had seen in 5,000 years. I remember the moment command called us. Not through secure channels, no, they came through a visual feed. I could see the Admiral's face, pale, gaunt. He didn't look angry. He looked like a man who realized the leash had snapped and the dog was off in the woods hunting with blood in its teeth. Kellen, he said, what the hell did you just do? I answered the way I always did when I knew I was about to get court-martialed. I won. He didn't respond right away. Just stared through the screen like he was trying to see past me, see into the soul of the weapon we just unleashed. Maybe he thought I was bluffing, or maybe he hoped someone else pulled the trigger, but no, it was me, my thumb, my order, because someone had to do it and no one else had the balls. That day everything changed. And I don't mean in a poetic way, I mean in real, measurable, irreversible ways. The Galactic Senate froze trade with Earth instantly. Port sealed credits. Blocked diplomats recalled. The media across the stars called us terrorists. Fanatics, warmongers, they ran footage of the dreadnoughts' debris and called it a massacre. Funny, they didn't use that word when the Zorvani sterilized colonies. Didn't matter, we knew the cost, but the part no one predicted, not even me, was what happened next. The Zorvani pulled back. That's right, the most feared species in our quadrant, the same ones who used to send fleets as warnings, withdrew not just from Jupiter but from 3 surrounding systems, and not quietly either. They left behind messages etched into satellites pulsing with ancient energy. The humans are not bound by the laws of civility. They are not warriors. They are extinction incarnate. We became myth overnight. But here's where the real rot started to show. While the galaxy shook in fear, Earth split in two. Half the world wanted to apologize, the other half wanted more railguns. The politicians scrambled to control the narrative to make it seem like the incident was a defensive reaction, like it was a malfunction or rogue act. They blamed us, the engineers, the soldiers. The fringe outposts like Omega 19 said we acted without authorization, said we'd be disciplined accordingly. They wanted a scapegoat, they wanted me. 2 days later, they sent a retrieval team to Omega 19, but not to thank us, not to debrief, to arrest us. They came in a stealth corvette, military high tier, not broadcasting on any frequency. They docked without clearance, boarded with sidearms drawn. You'd think they were storming a terrorist cell. I watched them drag my mechanic, old Graham, out of his bunk like a common criminal. Guy was 62, spine held together with steel plates, barely slept through the night without meds, and they threw him to the deck like a sack of meat. He built the cooling systems that allowed the railgun to fire without melting the whole station down. Without him, the weapon would have blown us all to hell, but that didn't matter. They zip-tied his hands like he was a war criminal. I snapped. I confronted the officer in charge, tall, clean uniform, polished boots, no scratches on his gear, the kind of man who never saw a battlefield in his life, but wore medals handed out like party favors. Is this what they send now? I asked. Stormtroopers for their own people. He didn't answer me, just handed me a data pad with one sentence glowing on the screen. You are relieved of command. I stared at it for a long time. Then I punched him in the face. You ever hit someone so hard you can feel their nose crunch under your knuckles? That's what I felt. The room erupted in chaos, guns raised. Shouts screamed, but no one fired. They didn't dare, not inside the station. Not around the reactor systems. I backed off, hands raised, but the damage was done. They put me in cuffs, hauled me into their ship. As they took me away, I saw the crew of Omega-19 lined up, silent, eyes full of rage, not just at the soldiers, at Earth, at what we'd become. They called us saviors one day, traitors the next. Because that's the truth about humanity. We're addicted to guilt. We hate ourselves more than anyone else ever could. They locked me in a black site called Echelon 4, somewhere beneath the Martian crust. No windows, no clocks, just steel walls and flickering lights, and interrogators with smooth voices and cold eyes. They didn't beat me. They didn't have to. They starved me of contact, left me in silence for days at a time. When they did come in, they asked the same question over and over. Who authorized the shot? Every time I gave them the same answer. Me. They tried everything, isolation, threats, even simulated executions, but I wasn't afraid to die. Hell, part of me expected it. I thought they'd execute me quietly and erase my name from the records, but that's not what happened. Because something else was happening outside that they couldn't control. The Zorvani didn't retaliate. Instead, they opened communications, not with Earth Command, not with the Senate, with Omega 19. They demanded to speak with the one who fired. You can imagine the panic that caused. Earth Command scrambled. They tried to intercept, tried to force communications through official channels, but the Zorvani ignored them. They weren't interested in politics anymore. They were interested in me, and suddenly the brass wasn't so eager to kill me. They yanked me out of the cell, cleaned me up, dressed me in a fresh uniform like I was some war hero. Instead of a prisoner, I could smell the fear on them, not of me, of what it meant that they weren't in control anymore. We sat in a cold Martian conference room when the Zorvani transmission came through. Hologram bloomed in the center, not a face but a symbol, their crest, swirling auros made of jagged stars. It pulsed with colors that hurt to look at. Then came the voice, not a translation, not standard, the actual voice of a Zorvani elder. It sounded like grinding metal soaked in fire. The human weapon speaks. We will listen. Everyone looked at me. So I spoke, and I didn't hold back. I told them we didn't want war, but we'd never run from it. I told them humanity doesn't bow to fear, doesn't negotiate with tyrants, and doesn't forget it's dead. I told them the Railgun wasn't the last weapon, it was the first, and I ended with a sentence I hadn't planned, one that came from somewhere deep inside, raw and honest. You thought we were soft. You mistook mercy for weakness. You won't make that Mistake again. There was silence, long cold silence. Then the Zorvani responded. Number we will not, and they ended the call, no threats, no demands, no invasion fleet. The next day, Zorvani ships began withdrawing from contested zones across the sector. They released human prisoners. They stood down because they weren't dealing with diplomats anymore. They were dealing with a species that didn't flinch. That's when Earth Command tried to rewrite history. They held press conferences, awarded themselves medals, made speeches about de-escalation and negotiation. Breakthroughs. They tried to paint me as a small piece of the puzzle, a technician doing his job, but they couldn't bury the truth. Because while they were playing politics, we taught the galaxy fear. And once fear gets loose, you can't put it back in the box. You'd think after silencing the Zorvani, Earth would have learned its lesson, but that's the thing about power. Once people realize you've got it, everyone wants a piece. The rail gun wasn't just a weapon anymore. It was a symbol. It wasn't about what it destroyed. It was about what it proved. That humanity, the emotionally unstable primitives of the galaxy, could build something the ancients feared, something that made entire star systems freeze up. In a moment, the moment the tungsten rod hit the dreadnought, we stopped being the underdogs. We became the wild card, the species that didn't follow the script. And that scared the hell out of the wrong people, not the aliens, our own. When the Zorvani pulled back, Earth Command should have used that breathing room to regroup, unify, rearm. Instead, they buried their heads in bureaucracy. They launched investigations, tribunals, the kind of pencil-pushing witch hunts that happen when cowards want to control a narrative, while I was paraded around like some half-redeemed anti-hero. Omega 19 got shut down, the crew scattered. Graham retired under surveillance. The rest of them got reassigned to civilian sectors, all under the same lie to preserve peace. But we knew better. They wanted to make sure no one ever built another rail gun again, not without their leash around its neck. Didn't matter because we weren't the only ones watching. 2 weeks after the Zorvani stand-down, I got a message, not through military comms, not via any sanctioned channel. It came through a junker drone hacked to drift into Martian orbit, tagged as debris, but it wasn't debris. It carried a package, old-school data slate, encrypted 6 ways from hell, rigged to wipe if tampered. I cracked it in under an hour. The message wasn't long, just coordinates, a date, a name. Roach, now here's something you need to understand. In the darker corners of space, pirate zones, dead sectors, the kind of places no one in the Senate dares admit exist, there are names that get whispered, not spoken. Roach was one of those names. Ex-Black Ops, ex-Zuman, ex-everything. He was the guy Earth Command erased from records but couldn't erase from memory. The kind of man who didn't follow orders. He gave them even when no one was listening. If he wanted a meeting, it meant one thing: something big was coming. I borrowed a gunship from a contact in the Martian underground, a half-drunk ex-pilot named Nash who owed me his life. Long story, one I might tell you when I've had too much to drink. For now, all you need to know is Nash didn't ask questions. He just handed me the controls and muttered, "You're either flying to your death or your purpose, same thing." Really, the coordinates led to a derelict station orbiting a dying star. No official maps listed it, no beacons, no call signs, just a drifting hunk of Metal suspended above hellfire. When I docked, I expected a trap, a bomb, a firing squad, but I found something worse. Truth. Roach was waiting in the central chamber, no guards, no weapons drawn. Just him, gaunt half-mechanical skin, pale from years away from real sunlight. His right eye was a cybernetic cluster that warred when it focused. His left hand was missing 2 fingers, replaced by tool extensions. And yet when he spoke, his voice was steady, calm, like gravity wrapped in sandpaper. You finally pulled the trigger, huh? I nodded, didn't need to explain which trigger. He didn't smile, didn't scold. He just tossed me a data chip. They're building a counterweapon. My stomach turned. Who? Everyone. That's when the flood hit me, not words. Data, videos, sensor readings. Intercepted transmissions from at least a dozen different species, some of them allies, some of them neutral. Hell, a few were humans from different colonies. Operating off the grid, they weren't trying to understand the railgun, they were trying to outgun it. See, once fear takes root, it spreads like rot. The galaxy saw what one weapon could do and decided they didn't want to be on the receiving end of the next version. They weren't going to wait for diplomacy. They weren't going to risk another Omega 19 incident. They were preparing for the worst case scenario, humanity unchained. So they started building mass disruptor cannons, planet-scale plasma nets, eye-driven counter-kinetic fields, things outlawed by treaties so old they were written in dead languages. The Zorvani were the first to blink, the rest were getting ready to shoot. And what was Earth Command doing? Still talking about sanctions, still shuffling papers and pretending like politics could stop an extinction level arms race. Roach walked to a console and pulled up a star map. Dozens of systems blinked red, not because they were hostile, but because they were arming. You lit the fire, he said. Now they all want flamethrowers. I leaned against the rail, jaw clenched. What do you want from me? He looked me dead in the eye. With that warring lens, I want you to finish what you started. At first I didn't respond. Then I said the only thing I could say, if I do. We're not the wild card anymore. We're the threat. Roach smiled, the first real smile I'd seen in months. Good, about time they felt what we've been feeling for centuries. He was right. We'd been looking up at the stars for generations, wondering what was out there. Turns out it wasn't wonder waiting for us, it was exploitation, manipulation. Beneath all their tech and glowing treaties, the galactic elite still saw humanity as a resource, workers' cannon, fodder, disposable. But not anymore, not since the railgun. Not since we showed them that when you push a human far enough, they don't break, they snap. And what comes out the other end isn't something you can reason with, it's something that erases you from history. Roach had a plan, a network hidden. Bases, scientists cast out from civilized space, engineers like me. Angry, brilliant, and dangerous, we weren't the future Earth Command wanted. But we were the one the galaxy needed to fear. And the best part, we weren't alone. Because something else was happening out there, something no one was talking about on the news channels or official reports. Other species, subjugated ones, were watching humanity rise with wide eyes and clenched fists, and some of them, they liked what they saw. They didn't want peace, they wanted blood, and they wanted our help. Roach turned off the star map and looked at me. You've got two options, Kellen. Go back to Earth, let them try to bury you in metals and laws until you rot. Or become what they fear, the one thing they can't control. I didn't hesitate. Give me the schematics. And just like that, war didn't become a possibility, it became inevitable. We called it Project Goliath, not because it was big, though it was. Not because it was powerful, though it made Hammerfall look like a child's toy. No. We called it Goliath because we knew someone out there would play David. Someone would come swinging their little moral slingshot, trying to knock us down in the name of peace, order, justice. But this time there'd be no stone big enough. After my meeting with Roach, I disappeared. No goodbyes, no trail. Earth Command couldn't find me, but they tried. Oh, they tried. I heard they issued a warrant, called me a security threat, a traitor. That part made me laugh. I'd already been court-martialed once. Guess they wanted a sequel. I went where the signals died and the stars turned cold. A sector known as Null Space Theta, abandoned since the collapse of the old wormhole network. It was the perfect hiding spot. Radiation storms kept most surveillance drones blind. AI wouldn't function properly. Communications were patchy at best, but for men like me, men who didn't need permission to build monsters, it was a forge. The forge, to be exact, a drifting facility the size of a city built into the skeleton of a dead god SH ship from the Ancients era, metal twisted into cathedral-like halls, half of it still singing with phantom energy. The place had been off the grid for centuries, forgotten even by the Senate, but Roach's people had restored it just enough to function. And then they handed it to me. We weren't a government, we weren't even a rebellion, we were a response. I walked through the main assembly corridor that first day and saw the parts already waiting. Spinal coil segments the size of skyscrapers. Ion fusion batteries cannibalized from a derelict mining moon. Magnetic rails forged from neutron star alloys. This wasn't a prototype, this was a promise. We didn't have time for politics. Every hour wasted was another hour the other species were catching up. I saw the data myself. The Zorvani were already field testing anti-kinetic shields. The Velnari had built a gravity well designed to bend projectile paths in real time. And the Salari, they were developing biohips that could predict Railgun strikes seconds in advance. They were adapting fast. We had to go faster, so I pushed the team like a man possessed. I didn't care about sleep, didn't care about comfort. I cared about mass ratios, energy dispersal, recoil stabilization, coil harmonics. I made grown engineers cry. I threw chairs. I screamed when things shorted, and when they didn't, I screamed louder because it meant we were onto something. There was no space for weakness here, not in Goliath's shadow. I had one rule: no AI. I didn't care how advanced it was. I didn't care how many predictive algorithms it had. We built Goliath with hands, not code. Every bolt, every weld, every trigger system human-made, human-controlled. The galaxy was addicted to autonomy. They let their machines decide targets, calibrate weapons, make judgment calls. Not us. We didn't want reason, we wanted impact. And God help anyone standing in the way of that. It was during week 6 when the fractures began. Not in the metal, in The crew, some of the younger engineers, ex-military brats mostly, started asking questions. Are we really going to use this? What's the target? Are we the good guys in this? I ignored them at first, thought they work would grind that idealism out of them, but it didn't. One of them, a kid named Rainer, started gathering sympathizers, quiet whispers in the mesh halls, doubts, questions, the kind that wrought a project from the inside out. He cornered me one night while I was running diagnostics on the firing core. You're building a weapon that could erase a planet, Kellen, he said. I didn't look up. That's the idea. Not even denying it, I finally looked at him, barely 25, clean skin, no scars, no betrayals carved into his bones yet. Rainer, I said, have you ever seen a child's rib cage after a plasma strike? He froze. Have you ever walked through a colony where the atmosphere was ripped away and the people, the civilians, were flash frozen mid-scream? He didn't answer. I have. I breathed in that silence, and you know what I learned? That mercy gets you wiped off the map. He swallowed hard. I saw the war behind his eyes. Conscience against survival. I let the silence hang before adding one more thing. If you can't handle what we're doing here, leave. I'll even give you a shuttle, but don't try to stop me. He left, took 5 others with him. Roach said we should have spaced them. I disagreed. Let them go. Let them run back to Thermes and their fragile ideals. Because one day when the sky starts bleeding again, they'll remember who built the wall they're hiding behind, and they'll remember they walked away from it. By week 10, Goliath was fully assembled, not tested, not calibrated, just built. The barrel ran the length of the facility's spine, a Million rail with a launch cradle that looked like the jaws of a mechanical beast. The projectile chamber could hold a tungsten rod the size of a house, laced with exotic alloys that destabilized on impact. We'd cracked gravitic dispersal, meaning shields wouldn't stop it, not anymore. It was a weapon designed to erase history. But what made Goliath different wasn't the power, it was the choice. Hammerfall was built as a bluff. This time there would be no bluffing. This time when we charged the rails, there'd be no walking it back. I stood in the control tower that night, staring at the firing interface. One button read, simple, beautiful, no retina scan, no access code, just a button and a warning. Fire authorization means global consequence. Proceed. I didn't press it, but I kept staring because even I didn't know what the next move was. And then the move came, a transmission unauthorized, encrypted so deep it nearly melted the receiver. Roach cracked it himself. What we saw made both of us go still. A human colony, Colony 73B, unofficially named Bastion, had been glassed, gone, nothing left, no warning, no claim of responsibility, no survivor. We traced it not hard once we aligned the burn patterns. The Solari did it. The same species who once called us emotional savages. They wiped out 300,000 civilians in silence. They didn't announce it, didn't brag, because they didn't see it as war. They saw it as prevention. Humanity had scared them, so they decided to preemptively correct the risk. Roach turned to me, eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. We fire now. I didn't respond. I just walked to the terminal, input the coordinates, locked onto Salari Prime, their home world, their capital, their pride. Roach stared at me. Are we ready? I looked down at the button, and for the first time in my life, I hesitated. Because what comes after you erase? Civilization, there's no treaties, no. Second chances, no going back, theirs. Only the void and your reflection in it. I didn't press the button, not that night. Not because I lost my nerve, but because pressing it then would have made it a reaction, an emotional lash out. Vengeance for Bastion's dead, and Goliath wasn't built for emotion, it was built for purpose. The Salari had fired first, they committed a massacre without blinking. The bodies hadn't even cooled in Bastion's dust when they began sending official condolences through diplomatic channels, words wrapped in lies, not even a whisper of accountability. They wanted to control the narrative, turn their genocide into a tragic miscommunication. Earth Command bought it, of course they did. I watched the press broadcast from their marble hall on Luna. Ambassador Horvath with his smug, polished face stood behind a podium and said the words like they didn't burn in his throat. We have accepted the Salari. Explanation that the destruction of Colony 73B was a result of a deep space mining misfire. A mining misfire, they used a planetary sterilization beam to mine empty space. Apparently, they said their AI made a trajectory error. They even offered reparations, not to the victims but to Earth Command. Blood money, that's when I really knew that Earth was lost. The bureaucrats had no spine and worse, no memory. They forgot the Railgun. They forgot Hammerfall. They forgot who we were, what we became after the Zorvani. But I remembered, Roach remembered. And now Bastion would be remembered. We gathered in the Forge's core hall, a grim cathedral of metal and circuitry. Roach stood by the firing console. I stood across from him, arms folded. No speeches, no countdown, just silence. Heavy, uncomfortable. And then I said it, load the slug. The technicians obeyed. A 10-ton on rod slid into the rail chamber with a hiss of super-cooled gas. Goliath hummed to life. Its coils began charging, building magnetic tension until the deck vibrated. Under our feet, target locked. Someone called out, Salari Prime, their capital city, Vornu, population 1.2 billion. It was a city made of glass towers, floating Montreals and dreamlike architecture, a symbol of peace, a lie, standing tall on the bones of cowards. Roach turned to me. Final order, I said. Nothing, just walk to the console. My hand hovered over the red button. This wasn't rage, it was resolution. Fire. I pressed it, and the galaxy changed again. There's no flash in space. No shock wave you can see, just data, trajectory paths, heat signatures, energy spikes. The slug left Goliath's chamber at a velocity that shattered every speed record in human history. Within moments, it crossed 2 systems and hit Salari Prime like the wrath of an old god. We didn't get footage, no cameras on the ground, but the satellites we'd hijacked caught enough. The rod struck Valor Newell dead center. It didn't explode, it imploded, dragging half the city into a newly formed sinkhole. The energy bled outward, causing tectonic chain reactions that rippled across the planet. Cities buckled, oceans boiled, spaceports cracked like eggshells. Estimated casualties 400 million. It was surgical, cold, calculated. Scalpel across the throat of a liar. The transmission came 2 hours later. The Salari were silent, not crying, not raging, stunned. Their broadcast didn't show their leaders, just a rotating holographic symbol flickering with panic code. Human forces have executed an unsanctioned act of planetary aggression. We demand immediate identification of the responsible entity. Retaliation protocols are under evaluation. They didn't even know who did it. We left no trace, no IFFF, no signal burst. Goliath had fired from null space, off the charts, untraceable, but the galaxy knew who it was because no one else builds rail guns that make continents disappear. They didn't say our name, but they feared it, and fear spreads. Within days, planetary governments started defecting. Independent colonies stopped responding to Senate orders. Pirate fleets, mercenary guilds, fringe species, all of them started whispering the same thing: the humans are awake. Not Earth, not Command, United States. The real humans, the ones who didn't care about handshakes and treaties, the ones who remembered what it was like to live under someone else's boot. And then came the storm. The Salari moved first. Not with another genocide, but with propaganda. They tried to paint us as extremists, rogue terrorists acting against our own kind. They sent diplomatic fleets to Earth, begging for cooperation in rooting us out, and Earth agreed. I watched it from a stolen feed. The president of the Terran Union signing a cooperation pact with the same species that had turned 300,000 human civilians into ash. They framed it as solidarity in the face of radical elements. Solidarity. My knuckles bled from how hard I punched the console. That was the moment I gave up hope for Earth. They weren't victims anymore. They were partners in betrayal. And like every coward who climbs into bed with monsters, they were going to get eaten alive. Roach and I sat alone that night, staring out into the void from Goliath's viewport. The stars looked closer now, brighter. But maybe that was just the reactor glare reflecting in my eyes. You know what comes next, don't you? I asked him. He nodded slowly. We become a nation. It sounded stupid when he said it, too clean, too structured, but he was right. We couldn't be shadows anymore, couldn't just fire and vanish. The galaxy needed to know we weren't just angry, we weren't just vengeful, we were organized. We sent out a message. No encryption, no politics, no spin. Just a broadcast across every free channel, every pirate relay, every forgotten frequency in the void. We are the Forgion. We are not Earth. We do not recognize the authority of the Terran Union. We are not bound by your treaties, your courts, or your chains. We are the line in the dark, and if you come for us, we will erase you. The galaxy didn't respond with speeches. This time, they responded with fleets. Within 48 hours, the first coalition warships entered null space, not Earth ships. No, they were too afraid to get blood on their hands directly. These were mercenaries funded quietly by Solari peace foundations, escorted by Zorvani observers. 15 ships, 7 destroyers, 4 interceptors, 2 stealth frigates, and a command carrier. They came in silent, hoping to catch us sleeping. But you don't sneak up on the forge. We'd been waiting. We didn't fire Goliath, not right away. Instead, we sent out decoy crafts, drones wrapped in metal made to mimic our signatures. The coalition ships chased them, split formation, followed the bait. That's when we dropped the hammer. We'd built orbital mines, magnetic warheads, buried in asteroid debris. When the ships passed through, they detonated in a cascade. The destroyers were vaporized. In under 3 seconds, the frigates tried to retreat. Too late. Only the command. Carrier survived, barely. We boarded it. No demands, no speeches, just a single message burned into its bridge wall. Before we let it go, next time we don't. Spare the bridge, they didn't send another fleet, not for a while, because they realized something even worse than a powerful enemy. They realized we were smart. We didn't have a flag. We didn't have a national anthem. We didn't have currency or a senate or some pretty speech about unity. We had survivors, and we had Goliath. That was enough. After we shattered the first coalition fleet in null space, the galaxy didn't know what to do with us. Their empires weren't built to handle humans who stopped asking permission. They couldn't bribe us, couldn't shame us, couldn't bury us in red tape. They were used to humanity playing the game. We flipped the table instead. That was the day we went from a rogue operation to something far more dangerous. An idea. They started calling us the Forgion, first as an insult, then as a curse. Eventually it became a warning. The name spread across colonies like wildfire. From the outer systems where Earth had abandoned its settlers to the mining belts where the Senate taxed every gram of ore, people started to whisper, Forgion are real, they fight back. And when whispers weren't enough, they started leaving entire work crews, families, ship captains, mercenary units, defectors from Earth's own military, people who'd been used, discarded, broken. They came to us not for safety but for revenge. I remember the first refugee ship that arrived. Null space, a rust bucket freighter named Ashwick, scars all over its hull. No engines left, just drifting. We pulled it in manually. Inside were 200 people, miners, engineers, one-legged soldiers. One of them, an old woman with machine oil in her veins, looked me dead in the eyes as she limped off the ramp and said, "Where do I start welding?" We didn't ask for credentials. We asked what they hated, because only the hated one survived long enough to matter. We had no government, so Roach and I built a council, not a democracy, not some fantasy court with robes and formality. Just 5 seats, 5 voices, each of them earned, not appointed. Roach for military command, me for weapons and engineering. Halden, the rogue diplomat who leaked classified Earth treaties to us before defecting. Dr. Sarah Van, a biochemist who once developed plague bombs for the Salari until they sterilized her outpost and left her for dead. Mecha, non-human, half machine, half mammal, from a species Earth never even bothered naming. The last of his kind. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it was to end debates. We met in a cold chamber under Goliath's core. No windows, just steel walls and flickering lights. And every time we sat at that table, the weight of it felt like a blade pressed against our spines. We weren't leaders, we were executioners with blueprints. Halden was the one who proposed it, a declaration not of war, not yet, but of sovereignty. He said we had to legitimize the Forgion or we'd always be painted as terrorists. I hated the word legitimize, but he had a point, so we broadcast a message again, unencrypted. Raw truth laid bare. We are not terrorists, we are not criminals, we are the future you buried under rubble and silence. We are a nation without planets. We are a people forged in betrayal. We are the hand that strikes back when the voice is ignored. We are the Forgeborn. The message didn't ask for recognition. It warned them, and the reaction predictable. The Terran Union declared us an illegal entity, offered bounties on our heads. Class 4 threats, maximum engagement. Authorization. The Salari labeled us a galactic plague, the Velnari sanctioned. Death squads, but not everyone sided with them. The first to reach out were the Drenak, insectoid species hive mind. Fragments. For decades they'd been under forced labor treaties held in chemical compliance by the Velnari. Earth had ignored their cries for help for years. When they saw our message, they hijacked a Velnari ship and burned it in orbit. Then sent us a message of their own. We bring 40,000 strong. Give us targets. We did. We welcomed them into the forge, retrofitted their organic tech, and trained them in railgun theory. I watched one of them, a warrior named Sex, recalibrate a coil array with only 2 arms while explaining gravitational bleed like he'd studied it since birth. He hadn't, he just wanted to learn. Because the forge wasn't about bloodlines or origins, it was about commitment to vengeance. And the Drenak, they had generations of it bottled up. Next came the human exiles, soldiers from Earth's outer colonies, pilots who'd been abandoned. Deep space, scientists blacklisted for opposing unethical terraforming policies. Some of them looked like they'd stepped straight out of a war crime tribunal. We didn't care if they fought, they earned their place. If they hesitated, they were escorted out the airlock. No debates, no appeals. The forge didn't accept fear, it processed it. Within months, we turned Goliath into a city, not a city of comfort, a city of war. Shipyards bloomed like fungus around its core, orbital rings loaded with railgun turrets, mining rigs churning asteroid belts into tungsten slugs. Each level bristled with activity, with people who had nothing left but a will to destroy the ones who discarded them. I walked those levels every day. No guards, I didn't need them. The people saw me and nodded. Some saluted, most just got back to work. I liked it that way. They didn't worship me, they trusted me because I wasn't a politician in a suit. I was the man who pulled the trigger when the galaxy flinched, and I'd do it again. Then came the Silent Armada, an alliance of Earth defectors, alien dissident, and AI ships no longer recognized by their creators. They sent no warnings, no demands, just 12 black ships that hovered outside Goliath's territory, cloaked in anti-skin tech. We thought they were hostile. They weren't. They sent one message: you fight, we follow. Their ships were massive, ugly, but fast, armed with experimental rail assist cannons and EMP nets. Their captains, all stripped of rank, erased from existence. Outlaws, we made them our vanguard. They called it Operation Iron Peace. Nice name, clean, sanitized. Something they could slap on press releases while pretending it wasn't what it really was: an extermination protocol, not just against the Forgeborn, not just against Goliath, against anyone who sympathized with us. They started in the outer colonies, not with bombs, with lies. They branded the Forgian as an extremist cult, accused us of hijacking trade ships, kidnapping children, inciting insurrections. They faked vids, doctored footage, fed fear into every screen back on Earth. It worked for a while until their fleet started burning civilian settlements. That's when the mask cracked. That's when people stopped asking questions. Because when the Union wiped out Port Argus, there was no way to spin it. Port Argus was neutral, a mining colony on the edge of the Helix Veil. No weapons, No strategic value, they declared. Loyalty to no one, all they did was shelter refugees. When Union dreadnoughts arrived in orbit, the people thought they were being rescued. Then the atmospheric core was shattered. They didn't even fire a warning shot. 30,000 dead, families, children, mechanics, miners, people who had nothing to do with the war, all because they let a Forgion supply ship dock for an hour 2 weeks earlier. The Union called it a containment action. We called it what it was, murder, and that was the moment we stopped defending. It was the moment we stopped caring about public opinion, about diplomacy, about holding back. That's when we started the Ghost Offensive. The first strike was a message, not words, not data, a silence. We targeted Relay Node Theta, one of the Union's main communication hubs between the inner worlds and the frontier. Fleet's massive station shielded, guarded by 3 carrier groups. We didn't go through them, we went beneath them. We developed stealth torpedoes in the Forge's dark labs, not just cloaked, invisible to gravitational scans, silent to thermal, cold as the void. We sent 6-4 made it through. They didn't explode, they hollowed. The torpedoes were designed to drill, burrow, and ignite their cores in reverse, sucking the air, metal, and personnel into compressed vacuums before vaporizing. The station didn't erupt, it collapsed in on itself. No communications, no escape, no chance. It went dark in under 7 seconds. After that, every Union ship within 5 systems went blind. Their response frantic, sloppy, desperate. The next strike was even worse. This time we hit a battle group fleet. Command Alpha 12, stationed in the Delar Stretch, 9 destroyers, 2 dreadnoughts. Their mission was simple: block off all entry into the Forge's zone of influence. We let them hold position for 2 weeks, then we dropped a present into their orbit, a decoy ship, empty, slow, heavily damaged broadcast distress signals. They pulled it in for boarding. When they cracked the hull, they found 50 tungsten slugs suspended inside, each armed with proximity triggers. The blast shredded half the fleet and the rest. That's when Vin got involved. Dr. Sarah Van wasn't just a biochemist anymore. She was the head of our black biology division, and what she deployed that day was something the Salari once tried to build and failed. Smart plague code, viral nanites that only activated in the presence of specific DNA markers, in this case Union officer rank gene standard, encoded into their command staff for internal tracking. The nanites didn't kill them, they shut down their motor functions, paralyzed them inside their own bodies, then shut off their implants. The commanders of Fleet Alpha 12 choked to death inside their own suits, helpless to stop it. We didn't salvage the wreckage, we left it floating, a graveyard warning to anyone watching. After that, Union recruitment numbers plummeted. Young officers started refusing deployments to the outer sectors, ships went missing, and more importantly, Union soldiers began defecting. One of them was named Brandt, a former Union strike commander, decorated, feared, a man who led over 100 operations against alien uprisings. He showed up at Goliath in a stolen Corvette with 24 soldiers. Half his face was burned from a plasma discharge, the other half looked dead. Inside, he walked into the Forge's war room without saluting, without kneeling, and dropped his Union badge on the deck in front of Roach. "I killed for them," he said. "Now I kill because of them. we gave him command of a Forgian division. Within 2 weeks, he led a surgical strike on a Union black site, freed 700 prisoners, blew the place into orbit, and came back. Without losing a single man, the galaxy started calling him the Ghost General. Earth Command issued a kill order on site. We gave him a fleet, but for every win we carved into the stars, the Union escalated. They started building counter railgun units, not to stop our slugs. No, they knew they couldn't match Goliath's velocity. So they built mirror fleets, disposable ships that could intercept trajectory data, calculate impact zones, and throw themselves into the line of fire. They turned their soldiers into shields. They created something called the Eclipse Division. Brain-chipped commandos bred in vats, conditioned from birth to treat death as obedience. They didn't speak, didn't think, they just obeyed. We captured one. It took 3 minutes of silence before it exploded internally, self-destruct. Nanites vaporized its spine, but we learned enough. Earth wasn't just trying to kill us anymore. They were trying to erase the idea of us, so we stopped hiding behind morality. We built Leviathans, not ships, not bases. Weapons with engines. Massive cruisers, shaped like spears, designed to carry rail slugs larger than Earth's tallest towers, not for tactical strikes, not for planetary warnings, for extinction level assaults. And when the time came, we knew exactly where the first one would fly. Not Solari, not Filnari. Earth, not to destroy the planet, but to knock on their door and ask them one last time, which side are you on? The Leviathan was named Judgment, not metaphor, not poetry. It was the literal name carved into the side of its million hull in bleeding black alloy, visible from orbit. No lights, no anthem, no escort, just a shadow that moved. It launched from the forge in silence, carrying 3 things: a crew of Forgian loyal to death, a payload designed to erase a city with a single strike, and a message to Earth. No encryption, no diplomacy, just one line of text broadcast to every channel: we are coming home. The Terran Union didn't panic. They prepared because they knew what we were capable of, not just what we'd done, but what we meant. And nothing terrifies a weak empire more than those who refused to kneel. So they turned Earth into a fortress. Orbit was layered in defense grids, fleet stationed in geosynchronous lock. They activated every dormant satellite, weapon platform, mobilized every standing fleet, mobilized every soldier. They had, the public was told we were a terrorist army. That Judgment was a doomsday weapon targeting civilians. That we had no demands, no conscience, no goal beyond destruction. That was a lie. We did have a goal. We wanted an answer after all the treaties broken. After Bastion, after Port Argus, after the countless betrayals, we wanted one honest sentence from Earth, not from the diplomats, from the people. Were they with us or against us? That was the question Judgment carried, and Earth had no intention of answering it. They wanted to shoot first. We emerged from the shadow side of Luna. Judgment's signature flared like a second sun. Bright, obvious, deliberate, no cloak, no stealth. Roach stood beside me on the bridge, arms crossed. Below us, Earth spun in blue silence, still beautiful, still poisonous. You think they'll talk? I asked. He shook his head slowly. They'll fire before they speak. I already knew that. I just wanted to hear someone else say it. The comms lit up, an open hail from Terran High Command, cold clipped. Mechanical. Unidentified war vessel, you are in restricted orbit, stand down immediately. And prepare for boarding, we didn't respond, instead we launched the drone. It wasn't a weapon, it was a relay. Inside it a live feed message, not a speech, not a manifesto, just footage of Bastion of Port Argus, of Union Black. Sites of sterilized colonies, of silenced prisoners, of defectors with scars carved from the inside out. Then my voice. We don't want your cities, we don't want your surrender, we want the truth, for every life you took, for every voice you silenced, we want your answer. And then we waited. 30 minutes, 45, an hour, no response. Then movement. Fleet Redeemer launched from Earth. Orbit, 12 destroyers, 5 cruisers, 1 carrier, formation clean, intent clear. Roach didn't even blink, time to target. 3 minutes, we didn't arm judgment, we didn't raise shields, we stood still. Because the next move would define everything, and then it happened. Something we didn't expect, a secondary hail, not from high command, from Earth itself, from the surface, a low band civilian frequency, bootleg weak, struggling to punch through the jamming. I ordered it patched through, the screen flickered, and there he was, a boy. Maybe 16, skinny, pale, burned from UV exposure. Behind him you could see the ruins of a working colony, one of the forgotten zones Earth didn't want to admit still existed. He didn't say much. Just looked into the feed, eyes hollow. Don't stop. Then the screen cut. No name, no plea. Just the truth, don't stop. I looked at Roach, no words needed. We armed judgment, one shot, one payloaded onto Union Command, buried beneath the Pacific Dome, where every order to erase us had been signed, where every smiling traitor wore their medals like armor. Earth's fleet moved to intercept. They fired first. We expected them to. 3 plasma lances, 2 smart torpedoes, a kinetic burst. Judgment's hull tanked it. All we fired, and the world held its breath. The rail slug broke through the upper atmosphere in 5 seconds. It struck with a force that split the sea apart, vaporizing a hole in the Pacific the size of a continent. The dome was gone. The command was gone. The lie was gone. And still we didn't fire again. We could have turned continents into deserts, reduced cities to shadows. But we didn't, because this wasn't annihilation. This was surgery. This was the scalpel for the rot, and the rot had been cut out. The rest unraveled quickly. Union loyalist forces fractured. Some surrendered, some fought, some turned their guns inward, finally realizing what they'd become part of. And the people rose, not with banners, not with cheers, but with teeth. They overran the domes, burned the flags, stormed the data banks. One colony after another declared allegiance to the Forgion, and in just 6 months, Earth wasn't the center of human civilization anymore. The Forge was. Goliath became a capital. Judgment became a monument. And me, I disappeared, not because I was hunted, because I was done. Roach took control of the new order. Vin headed the sciences. Halden led the negotiations, with neutral species now crawling out of the shadows, desperate to side with the victors. But me, I went back to Omega 19, back where it started, staring at the remnants of the first railgun we ever built, where I made the choice, where I pulled the trigger that silenced an empire, where The galaxy forgot how to speak, and you know what? It still hasn't remembered. Because when fear has a name, when justice has mass and velocity, when vengeance hums along magnetic rails at 3% the speed of light, you don't speak. You don't whisper, you run, or you kneel, or you burn.